Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on something that might be kind of personal for some of you guys out there. It's the impact of having a narcissistic parent. And you know how that sticks with you. We've got this super interesting article from the Awareness Center. It's a therapy place over in London. And honestly, I think you'll be surprised how often parents have these narcissistic tendencies. And the thing is, it can mess with kids in subtle ways, even if there's no, outright abuse, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. And it's funny because you hear narcissist and you picture I don't know, someone super loud, always wants attention.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. It's not black and white. Narcissism's more like a spectrum. Think of it like a line. Most folks are somewhere in the middle, right? Healthy amount of self-focus. But then a tiny few, they're way out on the edge.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into narcissistic personality disorder.
So you don't need your parent to have, an official diagnosis for it to still affect you.
Exactly. Even those everyday narcissistic things, the stuff we all probably recognize in someone we know, it could really mess with how a kid grows up.
Okay, so it's not just about, if my parents weren't abusive, then this doesn't matter for me. It's more complicated than that.
Way more. It's not about calling anyone out or giving labels.
Yeah.
This deep dive is about understanding how certain ways of parenting can shape us even years later.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's get into it. What are some of these NPD traits? The article lists a bunch.
Well, you've got that inflated sense of self-importance, always needing admiration, feeling entitled, even if they haven't, done anything to earn it. And this isn't just some personality quirk. It's like this driving force in how they deal with the world.
Yeah.
And they're kids.
Right, I'm seeing how that plays out. The article gave these examples, like a mom who's, the perfect parent in public, but then at home she's raging,
right.
Or a dad who gaslights his kids, so they don't even know what's real anymore.
Those are powerful examples because we're not always talking about, overt abuse. It's this pattern of manipulation where the kids' feelings aren't validated.
Yeah.
And that can do a lot of damage.
So it's more insidious, like chipping away at the kid's sense of self.
Yeah, and that leads to this key dynamic the article talks about. The child is like an extension of the parent, not a separate person. They're there to make the parent look good, to boost their ego. There's this quote, "Look at how perfect my children are. Didn't I do a good job?"
Ooh, wow.
It's all about the parent getting credit.
Right. It's not, you're a great kid, I love who you are. It's more like, look what I made. What does that do to a kid growing up?
Imagine always feeling like you have to perform, to earn your parents' love, like you're only worthy if you meet their expectations. And those expectations keep changing. It's so anxiety-inducing.
Walking on eggshells.
Exactly. Afraid to make a mistake. So you end up hiding who you really are.
And the article used this term conditional kindness. That just sounds heartbreaking.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It means the parent only gives love and approval when the kid does what they want. It's not free. It's a reward. So the kid never feels truly accepted.
Right. You're good IF.
Yeah.
And that's going to have consequences down the line, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how you see yourself, your relationships, even just making decisions.
All of that. These early experiences stick with us.
So let's talk about those long-term effects.
Okay.
The article lists a bunch of traits common in adults who had narcissistic parents. One that jumped out at me was indecision. And that intense guilt that comes with it.
Yeah.
Why is that so paralyzing?
Think about it. If you grow up always putting your parents' needs first, learning to push down your own wants and opinions, it's super hard to assert yourself later on. Every choice feels like you might disappoint someone, like you'll lose their love.
Even small stuff.
Even ordering food, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Picking a career path.
Yeah.
What to wear. It can all trigger that anxiety and guilt. Like that parent voice is in your head, judging you.
Wow. The article also talked about gaslighting as something narcissistic parents do.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain that? I think some people might not know what it means.
Gaslighting is basically manipulation. It's where someone twists things around. So you end up doubting what you know to be true.
Yeah.
Like you're going crazy. They might tell you something didn't happen when it did, or say you're overreacting, or that you're remembering things wrong. It messes with your head.
So with a narcissistic parent, they're messing with their kid's sense of reality.
Exactly.
And that sticks with them,
That's
right?
Big time. Adults who were gaslighted as kids often have tons of self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is common. They can't trust their own judgment.
Even if they're successful, they feel like a fraud.
Yeah, they second-guess themselves constantly. It really eats away at their confidence.
Okay, so this is all pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
But there's this one point in the article that I found kind of fascinating, but also confusing.
What's that?
It's about love and loyalty. If a parent is doing all this harmful stuff, why would the kids still be attached to them?
That's a big question for a lot of people who grew up like this. Part of it is we all want love and acceptance from our parents. It's primal, you know, to feel seen and valued by them.
So even if the love is messed up, you still crave it.
Yeah, and then there's also this pressure from society, like you're a bad person if you abandon your parent, even if they've hurt you. It's a tricky situation.
A lot to unpack there.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the, the narcissist parent, but what about the other parent? The one who's, well, not the narcissist. The article calls them the enabler, which sounds kind of harsh. It's easy to focus on the narcissist, but what's the other parent's role in all this?
That's a really important question. And honestly, it doesn't get talked about enough. The enabler might not be a narcissist themselves, but they're part of what keeps this unhealthy family going. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. It's like they're trying to keep things calm or protect the kids in their own way.
So maybe they don't fully grasp what the narcissist is doing?
Yeah. Or maybe they're scared to speak up, afraid of what'll happen if they do.
The article even says the enabler might actually help the narcissist manipulate.
Right. That can definitely happen.
Do you have an example of that?
Sure. Imagine the narcissist is always putting down one kid, but praising another kid like crazy. The enabler might go along with that, sending the message that one kid is better than the other, even if deep down they don't believe it.
Wow. So the enabler, even if they don't mean to, becomes part of the problem. It makes you wonder about the enabler too, right? Like, why are they in this situation?
Totally. Often the enabler has their own issues, their own vulnerabilities, you could say, that make them easier to control.
It's like a whole other layer of this thing.
It is. And it can be really helpful for the adult children to understand the enabler side too. It's not about blaming them. It's about seeing the whole picture.
All the different relationships and what's motivating everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so the article also talked about long-term effects. And one that stuck with me was insecure attachment. What does that actually look like in real life?
Okay, think about it this way. Kids need to feel safe and secure to thrive, right?
Makes sense.
They need to know their caregiver is there for them, emotionally, physically. But with a narcissist parent, they're often emotionally unavailable and inconsistent.
So the kid's always on edge.
Yeah, like it's going to happen this time. They never know what to expect. And that lack of a stable base, it really messes with their development.
The article called it a safe base, which is such a good way to put it.
It is.
So if you don't have that, how does it affect your relationships as an adult?
Well, imagine growing up without that consistent support. It's like trying to navigate some crazy terrain with no map, no compass.
You're lost.
Right. You might be constantly looking for validation from others, have trouble trusting people, or keep getting into relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable.
Like you're trying to recreate that missing piece from childhood.
Yeah, even if it's not good for you.
And it can show up in other ways too, right?
Absolutely. Some folks become super independent, push everyone away because they're afraid of getting hurt. Others might have trouble with their emotions, swinging between anxiety and feeling numb.
So it really touches everything.
It does.
It's amazing how much those early experiences matter.
It is.
But the good news is the article says recovery is possible, though it also cautions against confronting the narcissist parent.
Right.
Why is that? It seems natural to want to, call them out on their behavior.
It does. It really does. But with a narcissist, it usually doesn't work. They have such a fragile ego, and they need to be right all the time.
So if you try to confront them, it just blows up.
Basically, they'll get defensive, deny everything, might even turn it around and blame you.
Ugh, so frustrating.
It is. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's about recognizing that you can't change them. The focus needs to be on your healing.
Not on making them see your side of things.
Exactly.
Okay, so if confronting them isn't the answer, what can people do to start healing from this?
Well, the article has some good advice. And it all begins with awareness.
Knowing what you're dealing with.
Yeah, understanding the dynamics in your family.
And how those experiences shaped you.
Right. Just having a name for what you went through can be so powerful.
Like you're finally putting the pieces together.
Yeah. Making sense of those confusing, painful memories.
So once you have that awareness, then what?
Then you can start to challenge those negative beliefs you picked up about yourself. You can start to separate who you are from how your narcissistic parent saw you.
The article talked about rewriting the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean, practically speaking?
It means taking back your story. Instead of blaming yourself for your parents' actions, you start to see it for what it is. Their own issues, their insecurities. You realize you deserve better, that you were worthy of unconditional love.
It's a big shift.
It is.
It's like unlearning all those harmful messages and replacing them with a more compassionate view of yourself.
Exactly. And it doesn't happen overnight, of course. It takes time, effort, and often professional help.
Therapy can be a big part of it.
Huge. It gives you a safe place to process those memories, challenge those beliefs, and learn better ways to cope.
What about the other parent, the enabler? How do you deal with that relationship while you're healing?
That's tricky. Sometimes the enabler can actually be supportive, especially if they're working on their own stuff too.
Like maybe they're realizing what was going on.
Yeah, but in other cases, they might keep minimizing the narcissist's behavior.
Or denying it even happened.
Right, which is really painful.
So you might need to set boundaries with the enabler too.
Absolutely. It's about protecting yourself
Yeah.
from those patterns of invalidation.
Even if it's coming from a place of like not wanting to rock the boat.
Yeah,
You have to prioritize your own well-being.
exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
We have.
And I know this is heavy stuff for a lot of people.
Yeah,
But before we move on, I want to emphasize that there are hope.
absolutely.
It's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all.
It's about reclaiming your power, rewriting your story,
Building a life that's truly yours.
free from that narcissistic influence.
And we'll talk more about how to do that in part 3.
Stay tuned. All right. So we're back. And I'm ready to get into the healing part. Because it's one thing to, understand all the psychology, but actually breaking free from those patterns,
Yeah.
building a better life, that's the real challenge, right?
Absolutely. It's like
Yeah.
we spent the first 2 parts diagnosing the problem. Now we're going to figure out how to fix it.
Right.
And the good news is you can recover from this. The article gives some concrete steps, but I think hearing real life examples
Yeah,
makes it more real,
definitely. Stories are always more relatable. Like one thing the article mentioned was setting boundaries, which seems like a huge thing for people with narcissistic parents.
It makes sense, right? If you grew up walking on eggshells,
Yeah,
always trying to please someone who's never happy.
never good enough.
Exactly. Then saying no, putting your needs first, it feels terrifying.
Like you're betraying them.
Yeah, that parent voice is still in your head, telling you you're being selfish.
So how do you actually do that? Set those boundaries, I mean.
Okay, let's say you have a parent who's always demanding your time and energy.
Even as an adult.
Right. They call you constantly, expect you to drop everything to help them, guilt trip you into doing things their way.
Yeah, I know the type.
So a healthy boundary might be limiting those calls.
Like not answering every time.
Exactly. Saying no to unreasonable requests or refusing to play their guilt trip game.
Which is so hard.
It is, especially if you've never done it before.
It feels like you're breaking some unspoken rule.
But it's important to remember, this isn't about being mean to your parent. It's about taking care of yourself.
Protecting your own well-being.
Exactly. You have the right to say no, even if it makes someone else unhappy.
Which is a hard lesson to learn.
It is.
Especially with, family.
Yeah. And the article also talked about guilt.
As a big obstacle for people in this situation.
Oh, for sure.
Why is guilt such a common theme?
Well, narcissistic parents are masters of guilt trips.
It's their weapon of choice.
Exactly. They might guilt you for not spending enough time with them, or for not being successful enough, basically for not living up to their expectations. And that guilt gets inside you, makes you doubt yourself.
They're fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, and it can be so hard to break free from that.
That feeling of obligation.
Right, like you owe them something.
So how do you break free?
It starts with recognizing that those guilt trips are manipulation.
It's not genuine concern, it's a tactic.
Right, then you have to challenge those messages in your head. Remind yourself you're not responsible for your parents' happiness.
Which is huge E.
It is.
It's like separating your own well-being from theirs.
Yeah, you can love them without taking on their emotional baggage.
And therapy can help with that too, right?
Absolutely. A therapist can help you sort through those feelings.
And develop healthier ways to cope.
Right.
What about support groups or online communities? Can those be helpful?
That can be amazing.
Yeah.
Because one of the worst things about this is feeling like you're the only one.
Like no one understands.
Exactly. So connecting with people who get IT,
Who've been there.
yeah, it's incredibly validating.
And normalizes your experience.
Right, you realize you're not alone. And that healing is possible.
It's like finding your people.
It is.
Speaking of taking care of yourself, I wanted to mention self-care, which might sound kind of cheesy, but it's so important for anyone dealing with trauma.
It's not cheesy at all. It's essential. And narcissistic abuse is trauma.
So it's about nourishing yourself.
Yeah. On all levels.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally.
Spending time in nature.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Being creative, maybe.
Or just taking a break from everything. A long bath, a good book.
Whatever helps you recharge.
Right. The point is to find what works for you.
Yeah.
And make it a priority.
Reclaim your time and energy.
Exactly.
And remember,
healing isn't a straight line.
It's a journey.
There'll be ups and downs.
Yeah.
Setbacks and breakthroughs.
Be patient with yourself.
And celebrate those wins.
Don't give up.
You got this.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot.
We have.
And I hope it's been helpful for everyone listening. If there's one takeaway, it's that you're not alone and healing is possible. If you're dealing with the aftermath of narcissistic parenting, there's help out there.
Therapy, support groups, online communities, all of that.
They can give you guidance and support. The Awareness Center, where we got that article, they're a great resource too. You deserve a life free from that narcissistic shadow.
You do.
And with awareness, support, and self-compassion, you can rewrite your story and build a future full of joy and genuine connection. So that's it for our deep dive this time. We hope you learned something. And maybe even feel inspired to take that first step towards healing. Remember, you're worthy of love, happiness, and a life that truly reflects who you are.